Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast. Today is Tuesday, April the 15th. I'm Zach Ewing with Rod Walker, Matthew Paris, and Jeff Duncan. And we are going to talk some Derek Carr today because what else would we talk about? We have not had a chance to get together since the reports broke Friday. Yeah, a little shoulder injury for the Saints starting quarterback that reportedly could keep him out the entire 2025 season, could require surgery. Obviously, this is a bombshell, guys. This changes everything about the Saints 2025 season and the offseason with the NFL draft in 9 days here. So let's dig into this and talk about it. I guess we'll start at the beginning. What was your initial reaction? To me, this was one of the more surprising stories, Rod, that I can remember hearing in the offseason of just based on the timing of it, the news of it, and what it means for the team.
Yeah, I was actually at French Quarter Fest, and I looked at my phone and saw it, and I just couldn't believe it. You know, it's one of those things you look at and you say, wait a minute, is this a fake account or is this like real? And it was real, so I was shocked like everybody else was, for sure.
How about you guys?
I was in an ice cream shop in Miami and on enjoying some vacation, which I was like, well, to go back to the hotel to right now, so.
Where?
Did you bring the ice cream?
I had finished it before.
I mean, I think the timing of it is what's so strange, right? I mean, usually these type of stories come out right after the season, so it's just odd and strange and curious timing that leads you to believe there's more to this story. And from what we've been able to gather, I think in talking to people around the situation, there's definitely more to the story, I think.
Jeff, you didn't tell us where you were, though. You got to say, where were you when Derek Carr?
I really don't know.
I was on I-55 somewhere in Mississippi. I was probably passing Yazoo City, Rod. I was driving to Memphis.
Okay.
I was probably at home, but I can't remember it being. It wasn't that monumental for me that I remembered where I was.
We stopped. I was on I-55, and wherever we stopped the next time, I looked at our group chat, and there was like 27 new messages, and I said, oh,
that's not good.
Something happened, yeah. I don't know. I think the timing of it, Jeff, is right. Like, why now? Why, at the time, 13 days before the draft, but after Carr has restructured his contract this season, this offseason, that's the part that raises the most questions for me.
And 3 days before the teams was,
3 days before the team reported to voluntary workouts yesterday, which Derek Carr was not there, based on what we have gathered. As a couple of other injured players weren't there either. These were voluntary workouts. So, but that is the one piece of concrete information we know is that Carr was not in New Orleans for the start of voluntary workouts yesterday. So, I was thinking to myself, what is the most logical outcome here? Occam's razor. What makes the most sense? And I'm not sure I can even answer that question. Like, I don't know what makes the most sense. Or Jeff, you?
I don't know. Like Rod said the other day, I don't know what the end game is here. That's what I don't understand. I think it's pretty clear the release came from Carr's camp on Friday for a reason to get out ahead of reporting date on Monday. This is the first team meeting. Carr's been here in the past for these voluntary workouts. The fact that he's not here, I think they wanted to get out in front of that. When it initially broke, I thought it might be from the Saints, but I've since found out it definitely came from Carr's camp. So that's Carr and his representatives getting out in front of this. So that wasn't by accident that it was reported then. But I don't know what the motivation is here. That's one thing I think we're all going to find out eventually. It's going to come to a head. We're going to speak to somebody with the Saints next week before the draft. They have to have a press conference. Clearly, this is going to be front burner issue, and at some point, assuming Derek Carr does eventually come to New Orleans, he's under contract, he's going to have to face the music too. So it's going to be interesting to see what these answers are once we get a chance to ask questions.
Well, to build on Jeff's point, it doesn't seem like the Saints and Derek Carr are on the same page, and it's been like that for some time now. And the interesting question is why? How did it become that way? But here's kind of what we know. Into February, when they hired Kellen Moore gave a very non-committal answer of whether Derek Carr would be their quarterback next year. Said the process had to play out. They since restructured his contract, which they notably did not have to do with Derek Carr's permission. They already had that contract structure in there to allow them. It saved them about $30 million. Now, according to reporting elsewhere for ESPN, Derek Carr was open to a trade. It was open to hitting the market if that's what the Saints wanted. It kind of sounds like he wanted that. And ever since then, now he has a shoulder injury. I was told that it wasn't related to the fall that he took last year against the Giants when he attempted to dive for that first down and ended his season by breaking his hand. And so it's an old shoulder injury. Albert B reported that it's apparently the AC joint, the AC sprain that he suffered against the Detroit Lions in 2023. It's a long injury, and we saw Derek Carr throw the ball quite far last year. And so, I mean, maybe it's progress over time. Injuries certainly get worse. Ask Ryan Ramczyk about that. So, I'm not accusing the guy of faking an injury. It's just there is tension here for sure between the Saints and Derek Carr. And I think also the biggest question left unanswered is, when did the Saints know about this?
Correct. When did they know? How long have they known? It feels like there's a definite gap there between when they restructured and this all coming to a head.
Yep.
There's a disconnect, a clear disconnect between the team. We talked, Matt and I talked about this earlier. It's not uncommon for teams to go through these type of negotiations, discussions with players. The Rams and Matthew Stafford had a very similar, it's a little different, but a similar type of situation with his contract where they were open to letting him test the market for a trade, and he did. Jimmy Sexton was his agent, and they tested at the combine, and then they came back together. But the difference was they were on the same page and communicated throughout the process. It feels like there's been no communication here between the player and the team, and somehow it's just there's a divide that's formed. And from what I've been able to gather, there's definitely speculation from the Saints that this is not it's an injury, but there's more going on to it than just his injury. I can tell you that from people on Airline Drive.
The surprise to me is that neither side has addressed this publicly. I think, to me, this is a big enough deal where the Saints should have said, yeah, we were like they did with Chase Young, just come out and say, yeah, we were aware of this injury or something. Or at least Carr could have maybe come out now and said something.
That's the side.
He hadn't said anything either.
To me, the Saints, okay, there's this draft press conference next, Tuesday or Wednesday. And at that point, maybe the Saints know they'll have to say something. If you're Derek Carr, and we can assume at this point that this that this news came out from his camp, right? It was his side that released this news. Why wouldn't you then come out and say, here's what happened? And I mean, it's kind of a fine needle to thread, but I think there is a scenario in which everybody's doing things on the up and up. And Carr said, I had this injury. I thought it was better, but I ramped up my offseason throwing program, whatever. I was experiencing pain that I thought the break would fix, and it didn't, and now I'm worried about it, and I let the Saints know. But if that's the case, then say so. Because otherwise, everyone's going to go wild with these theories that he's faking it, that he's trying to force his way out of town, that he didn't tell the Saints when he should have about this injury. I mean, because you don't need to take a physical to restructure a contract. Like, that wouldn't have been part of that discussion. And we also know, maybe this is nothing, maybe it means something, that juxtapose what Derek Carr did last offseason when he was in New Orleans just about constantly and doing things in the community and being very visible and talking all the time, versus this offseason where, I mean, the Super Bowl was in New Orleans. We've talked about this before. He wasn't here. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean anything by itself, but he hasn't been in New Orleans as far as we know at all. He hasn't said anything on his Twitter account since New Year's Day. He hasn't said anything publicly while all of these rumors are flying rampant about trade rumors and now the injury and the Saints taking quarterbacks in the draft. We just don't know.
Right. I mean, he may very well want a trade or out of New Orleans. It's just, his 2 years here have been pretty up and down. I would say more down than up. He hasn't been welcomed, I think, Saints fans welcomed him. They were excited to get him, but then I think they realized very quickly that, hey, maybe this isn't our guy. And so it's probably been hard for him to play in that atmosphere. you have a new coach coming in, probably wanting his own guy. That's going to happen. Like, even if Derek Carr was healthy here and could play all of 2025, still probably would look. They would absolutely look at quarterbacks. They're still probably going to draft a quarterback, and so he sees the writing on the wall, and I think that's the situation that he doesn't want to be. I mean, this is just more of a guess, but he doesn't want to be the guy who hands the keys over to the next guy.
He doesn't want to be Kirk Cousins from last year.
But that's common around the league.
It is.
I don't understand why this is such a big deal.
And at some point, as you age, that's going to happen to you.
Derek Carr's not dumb, and his agents aren't dumb. I mean, they know when he signed that 4-year contract, he probably wasn't going to get to the end of it. So I don't know. That makes no sense to me. And the thing that makes the least sense to me is how it got to this point. I mean, from both sides, how do you reach this point? Why didn't it get settled before the restructure? Why wasn't everybody on the same page? I don't know how it reached this point. Clearly, they've talked. I mean, we've seen reports where they had discussions about his contract. So they have had communication. I mean, Kellen Moore said that.
Yep.
So it's not like they haven't talked. I just don't understand how it reached this point.
Yeah, I mean, I asked Kellen Moore at the owners' meetings whether Derek Carr wanted to be here, and he said, yeah, and whether he got the sense that he was excited and said, yeah. Now, maybe he's not going to disclose an injury in that fashion, but based on his comments, it certainly didn't sound like Derek Carr was injured, and that was April 1st. And so when did the Saints know that? Did they find out after owners' meetings? Did they already know by owners' meetings? I mean, part of this quarterback circuit they've been on is, they restructured his contract, around March 8th, something like that. And then they've been on pro day tours after free agency in the last week of March and stuff. So, it just, when did they find out about it?
And why wouldn't they get out in front of it? Like, they have an opportunity there at the owners' meetings, Kellen Moore, to say, there is something that Derek's dealing with, it's procedure he might have to have, get out in front of it. That's what you do in PR. You own the story and you are proactive with it. Instead, it sounds like they didn't know this clearly was coming, and now it's dropped in their lap on Friday. And I'm sure they're not happy about it.
The Saints also, I mean, they're like most NFL teams. They're not the most forthcoming with injuries. Just look at Derek Carr's injury last year where they left the door open for him to return every week, and then he didn't return.
Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
But a lot of those things were for competitive reasons.
Sure.
Right.
This is the off season. There's no reason to not talk about it. I mean, that's what I just don't understand. I think everyone here looks bad.
Right.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And to go back on something you said just a few minutes ago, comparing it to the Matt Stafford situation. Matt Stafford looked at the situation, looked at the teams available on the market, and said, boy, I can't do better than Los Angeles.
Right.
This is a great situation for me. If I compare it to Derek Carr, I don't know this for absolutely certain, but he looked at the market and said, boy, that might be a better situation than Saints. And New York, I mean, it would allow him at least to be the guy there.
That's pretty damning for the Saints, man.
Tennessee, I mean, I think the Saints are better situations than those. But
Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh, Tennessee, you probably would have beat out Will Levis. Even Seattle, who knows? Maybe he wanted to reunite with Clint Kubiak.
He's got a no trade clause, but this is something where he would okay it, I'm sure.
Right.
But was there a conversation with him and his representation from the Saints end of saying, look, maybe these teams didn't want that contract. Can you work with us on this? That's how these things work. You come down a little bit, you work with, to get out of here, you have to make some sacrifices.
Yeah.
If you want to move on, you have to make a sacrifice. He wasn't willing to do it. If he wasn't willing to do it, then I don't understand what this is all about.
Well, the trade from a salary cap perspective before restructuring was the most palatable. It would have saved over $10 million.
Right.
Rather than cutting him outright. So that was even I think an incentive for the Saints to explore it in the first place. And if he was open to it, they probably should have now looking back at it. But
what would that? How does that change now? Let's say the Saints try to trade him now, which is obviously difficult if everyone knows he has a shoulder injury. But And the reason I bring that up, Matt, is because related to that, if the Saints make him a post-June 1st cut, it would be a $20.4 million cap hit. They have $20.5 million in cap space right now. How does that happen? I don't know if that's planned. Like, the fact of the matter is they could actually do that if they wanted to. Now, you don't get anything in return, whereas in a trade, maybe you get a draft pick. So what would the salary cap machinations be? And the related question here that I want to open it up to is this the end for Derek Carr and the Saints? Has he played his last snap as a Saint?
Do we have an ad break so I can look this up during the ad break?
Yeah, we can do an ad break. Let's do an ad break, and we'll come back and we'll talk more about whether Derek Carr is done with the Saints, and if so, who plays quarterback in 2025 for the Black and Gold. Back right after this.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. With quick picks, you can tap right into pre-built, ready-to-bet parlays right from the home screen. And if you miss tip-off, no worries. You can play same-game parlays live during the action. Plus, it's never been easier to find and bet on the biggest matchups of the day, so you can keep up with all the action. Caesars Sportsbook, proud partner of the NBA and the only sportsbook app with Caesars Rewards. Download it today.
We got props. Matt went and got his laptop. He's looking this up for us. We are going to determine what the salary cap impact would be for the Saints if they were to trade Carr, which I don't know, Rod. I mean, can they trade Carr after he comes out and says he might need surgery? Like, obviously, the other team would go and do a physical, and maybe they would determine that the shoulder was okay, and maybe Derek Carr would magically become okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's put the Saints in obviously a tough spot. I mean, I think there's some. I mean, you could just cut him and take the loss with the money. I mean, it's gonna be a lot of money, obviously. But if a guy doesn't want to be here, like, and I'm at the point where I kind of feel like he just does not want to play in New Orleans again. I think Derek Carr is a guy who, I mean, obviously he's like really a family guy, and I think like all this the backlash that he's heard, I think it's probably like he probably like, you know what, I don't really want my wife, my kids around that anymore, and I'd like to move on. And this is just my opinion. I'm not basing this on anything, but I just think he may have got to that point in his career where he just doesn't want to do it again here.
You know, Mike Tomlin's got the line, "We want volunteers, not hostages." This feels like a hostage.
Right.
Yeah. And especially at quarterback, like you can't have that.
Right.
You just can't have your
100%.
quarterback being disgruntled going into a season with a new coach. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster.
But Matt, and I'm sure Matt can reference this, but it's totally different if they trade him after June 1st.
Okay, go ahead, Matt. What would you find?
All right, so if they do it before June 1st, which they're not going to, it leaves $78.8 million in dead money on the books. And after June 1st, it would be 19.2. And the reason for the differences of that is because the way that they've restructured the contract is the way that the money accelerates on the 2025 cap versus the 2026 cap. It would then lead, like, you would just eat the money later if you traded him in 2026. So, yeah, it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen before June 1st. Yeah.
Yeah, they
don't
cannot
think.
do it before June 1st. And to your point, you know, who's going to trade for him now? I mean, like, what teams are left? The Browns? Who's needing a quarterback right now?
So the Titans, who will almost certainly take Cam Ward, so that eliminates them.
Steelers.
The Browns, the Steelers. You know, the Giants have Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston.
Yeah, they're not trading for him now.
I don't think you're going to add a
you
third.
wouldn't have done what you did. So.
Yeah,
You would need someone to get hurt, basically.
which can happen, but there are limited options out there. I mean, I don't know. I think Derek Carr is probably better than 10 or 12 starting quarterbacks out there in the league. Would a team, you know, like the Jets, they have Justin Fields come in. They say, well, Carr, we can win more games with Carr than we can with Justin Fields. Let's go get him. But
they also take on his contract.
right.
Next year, they've got a
More
$40 million
likely,
base salary.
more likely than anything here is that he just straight up gets cut. If the Saints realize that there is no end in sight to this, you just cut him.
And that goes back to you should have done that before you restructured him.
Yeah, I mean, if they cut him next year without a June 1st designation, it would leave $59.6 million on the cap. And that's because his cap number is $69 million, 69.2. And so
But
they've
that's
restructured
the case,
it.
That's the case regardless of whether he plays for the Saints in 2025. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's almost just you have to just accept that as a sunk cost.
Yeah, I mean, they knew that going
Right.
into the restructure.
I mean, the curious thing about what you said, Jeff, is that they should have cut him before they restructured him. Well, what's changed since they restructured him? What would have made Derek Carr more disgruntled with the situation since they restructured him? And the only thing I could think of is that there have been a bunch of quarterbacks in the draft the Saints have met with, and there have been rumors flying about them taking a quarterback with their first-round pick, and maybe that's when Carr throws his hands up and says, well, I don't really want to be here anyway, and if you're showing me that this is my last year no matter what, then just get rid of me now.
I don't see that. I mean, he had to know that. He had to know that all along. So I mean, he's not dumb. I mean, he has to know that they might be drafting. He's what? How old?
they saw him.
Carr?
He saw him draft. He saw them draft a quarterback last
Right.
year.
I don't.
Yeah, 2 years
in the 5th round. I mean,
Still.
Yes.
Still, none of that makes any sense. I mean, he has to know just by the way his contract is structured that this is probably his last year. So I mean, what's the point? He's going to start this year. He's going to be the guy. He can move on and get another job somewhere else. And goes on around the league all the time. I don't see that. There's something else going on here.
Yeah, because if you wanted a job somewhere else, the last thing you would do is go public with an injury that might cost you the season.
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, none of it makes any sense. And it really leads back to really the biggest issue here. The root of the problem is the Saints' cap management issues that they keep digging themselves into intractable situations like this where they're stuck with players. They needed more flexibility with a guy like Derek Carr against the cap. Instead, they handcuffed themselves. We talked about this on the program before. They tied themselves to Carr a year ago when they restructured it.
Yep.
If you looked at his original contract, that 4-year deal, they could have gotten out of it after this past season. They could have. It would have been, much more palatable, put it that way. Instead, because they were in this horrible bind with the cap, his was the easiest contract to go into. Once you do that, you leave yourself very little flexibility. And this, in my opinion, goes back to, their cap philosophy needs to be changed because of reasons like this.
I agree with you, but I think a point to note is that the way that they structured that deal in the first place, they were banking on having to restructure it after year one just because of the way that their cap already was projecting to be. And then that deal originally contained void years that basically banked in, like, all right, when we redo this, it's going to lower it. Like, I had someone, JJ Hassel, who's a cap, he's actually an agent, but he's a cap guru, used to work for Washington Commanders. He said that, like, they did that contract with their intention to restructure it just because you wouldn't have formatted it basically like that otherwise. But that's how they do their contracts. They backload them, and then they try and have them take pay cuts later, and it doesn't always go over that well. That's kind of what I wonder, too. We haven't really talked about this part of it, is did they go to Derek Carr with the pay cut, and it was so insulting, he said.
Right.
Like,
And that's
done.
happened. I mean, I've talked to players in the past that have said, this is something that bothers them about the way the Saints conduct some of this business is they structure these deals to where it's backloaded. Now, the players get the money up front.
Yeah.
So they're getting their money up front. But still, it's they use that leverage. And we've seen it happen here with guys like Cam Jordan, Tyrann Mathieu. Those guys are not going anywhere. I mean, it's in their best interest.
They don't have as much of a market as Derek Carr would have.
Right, and also, like, they're at the end of their careers. An extra year to them probably means more. So it's easy to go to those players and get them to take a pay cut, not like Carr. And it's ruffled some feathers with some players about the way that process works. And in this instance, Carr had the leverage, really. He could say, no, I'm not going to take a pay cut. What are they going to do? They're stuck.
Right.
And that's where we're at.
Yeah. Okay, so before we move into who will play quarterback for the Saints in 2025, let's put it out on the table. I mean, one of the things about the reporting of this injury is that Carr said he was considering surgery, right? It's not a definite thing. It is possible that he feels better in a month or He feels better emotionally in a month, and all of a sudden that makes his shoulder feel better. And he goes through minicamp, and we get back to sort of business as usual. What is, if you guys had to pick right now, what percentage choice or just yay or nay, does Derek Carr play it down for the 2025 New Orleans Saints or ever again?
I think I'm going to say no. I'm not going to say no to ever. Well, I don't think he's going to play this year.
And if he doesn't play this year, I don't think he's playing for them.
Right. So I guess I am saying ever for the Saints. I think he's probably. Again, I don't know what his end game, like what he's trying to do here, but yeah, I just think this is not going well.
This is divorce. Yeah. Well, how about you?
Yeah, I think he probably elects for surgery. He just shuts it down and says good luck. I don't really see. Does the shoulder get magically better on April 27th if the Saints don't draft a quarterback the first 3 days? It's
every round that goes by, that shoulder.
I don't know.
A little better,
I say that, but I sat in this chair, or maybe Rod's chair, because that's where I've sat a lot in the show recently. But I guess that he would have been gone a few months ago when I thought the Saints were going to cut him. So I've been wrong on this before. But that said, I think he takes the surgery and is done for 2025.
Yeah, I mean, there's two possible outcomes. That one, which is probably most likely, and they just wash their hands of him after next season. He never comes back to New Orleans. Or the other one is they somehow get together, because they still have the out, both sides, to come, to continue this farce and come back and say, yeah, he's elected to, it's not going to be a problem, and they come together. They do that behind closed doors and make it work. Whatever is causing this rift gets smoothed over, but it's going to take some kind of communication and some kind of collaboration to make it work. And I'd say that's remote, but I think it could easily happen. Otherwise, I think this team's looking at a major rebuilding season.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious to see how he's going to come in and like be that locker room leader type guy with all this going on. Like, how we haven't heard any reaction from any players. I haven't. Have y'all seen any?
Not on.
Been quiet.
So I haven't seen. So I'm just kind of curious, like, what they think about all this.
That's a good point. Yeah. Okay. Well, if that is the case, and all three of you are in agreement that this is probably it, let's talk about the 2025 Saints and who plays quarterback. And I guess the discussion starts with Spencer Rattler, who started 7 games last year while Carr was hurt. Or 6. Hainer started 1.
Yeah,
he started 6.
But he played
and
in
then
7.
Finished in the other one. Saints went 0-7 in those games, as we know. Rattler showed some flashes, man. It wasn't like all bad, but he would very quickly follow up a good quarter or a good drive or a good half with something that made you think he could not be the future here. And we've all been operating under the assumption that Spencer Rattler as a starter next year is exactly what Jeff said, is a rebuilding season.
Yeah, I mean, it's Sam Howell from a few years ago, where you just go into it hoping he shows something, and the answer is most likely not, and you're in the quarterback derby next year. But I actually think they're going to take a quarterback. And they've been doing a lot of research. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be at 9. We all know Mickey Loomis loves to trade up. I could see him doing that even in the back of the first round. I think, especially given this situation, they probably, Kellen Moore probably wants his guy, and I think they're going to draft someone. I don't know if he's going to be the long-term answer here, but I think they'll take at least a swing at it and see how that works out. And if it doesn't work, then you're back in the quarterback market next year again, and you try and take another swing either through the draft or free agency, what have you.
I think exactly that. I don't think they're going to take a quarterback at 9. I think they will see how the draft unfolds from there, and then look to see if what the best move is. If they have to go back into the bottom of the first, that way you get that 5th year control, or you wait to 40. And I think their starting quarterback will be whoever they take, either at the bottom of the first or at 40, in a competition with Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler was most boards last year graded as a second-round talent. That's probably whoever they take is going to be graded similarly. So I don't think they're going to value him, but I do think it says something that they are looking at quarterbacks about Spencer Rattler. That tells me that Scott Tolzien, Doug Nussmeier, and Kellen Moore last year when they were evaluating the quarterbacks did not have that great of a grade on Rattler. Otherwise, they just probably roll the dice with him.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's just what's interesting to me about this is that now all of a sudden some of these teams in the draft, they know the Saints are desperate. The Raiders ended up meeting with Shador yesterday. The Giants are going to talk to him Thursday. So I think a lot of people feel like teams might be ready to, trade up, and they think the Saints are probably going to may trade up and try to get are desperate for a quarterback now. I think some teams are. I think that's why you're seeing a lot of this movement on this Shador stuff lately.
He's the odds-on favorite to be drafted by the Saints.
Yeah,
he's minus 110, I think, in betting markets too.
I know, like a lot of people thinking the Patriots, who are fourth. Yep. They were thinking like somebody might trade with the Patriots. So now they're saying like, okay, now all of a sudden the team that's ahead of the Patriots, the Giants, are like, let us go talk to Shador as well. And I think a lot of people are kind of like jockeying for trade positions at this point. I know the Carolina Panthers he said something earlier today about it as well. And
their GM said that their phone wasn't exactly ringing for people to jump the Saints. I think Shador's going to be there at 9. I don't know if they're going to want him, but I think he's going to be there.
Dion keeps dropping hints too that, watch that number 9 pick, and I like the black and gold. And now there could be two motives. He could actually be leaking news that he knows, or he could be just trying to drum up interest because he knows that if the Saints don't take Shador, the next spot for a team that needs a quarterback is the Steelers at 21. So then you start this long fall, and if the Steelers don't want him, he could go out of the first round. I mean,
he's not even invited to the. He's not one of the guys who's invited to the to the green room.
Because I think Dion may be a little bit worried that's going to happen, and so he's trying to drum up that interest.
I can definitely see that as well. So.
The Saints have met with 6 quarterbacks. Is that right? In some form or fashion, you've got Shador, you've got Kyle McCord, Jackson Dart, Tyler Shugg,
Miro,
Cam Ward.
They did.
Well,
they went to his pro day.
They went to his pro day. Yeah.
I feel like I'm missing
Quinn
somebody.
Ewers.
Quinn Ewers. So there's a lot. I mean, those guys are all up and down the draft board. They could.
And they met with Quinn. Met with Cam Ward at the combine.
Okay.
At least in the.
Did they meet with Miro at some point?
And Jalen Milroe. Yes, that's another one that they've
Basically
at least had dinner with.
Every quarterback.
Any quarterback who's going to be in the top 5 rounds at least they've met with.
Yeah.
So they've done their due diligence here. If there's one that Kellen Moore and his staff really like, they'll probably take him at the appropriate time, and he competes with Rattler or he becomes the starter immediately. I don't know. I mean, it just feels to me like what you guys said. You have to bring somebody else in. Is there a free agent out there that makes sense? I mean, I know people drop Aaron Rodgers. That doesn't make sense to me.
I can't see Mickey Loomis bringing in Aaron Rodgers.
Well, for one thing, if you're going to cut Derek Carr, we talked about $20.5 million and $20.4 million. There's nothing left to pay anybody.
And why
at that
would
point.
Aaron Rodgers, this stage of his career, want to come into this mess? Right. I don't know. I don't see that happening. He's kind of picking where he wants to go right now.
This offseason has been about the reunion for all sorts of reunions. I got him, came back, we'll clap. Maybe you give Teddy Bridgewater a call, see if he wants to come. But
I think I'm rolling with Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, exactly. To compete with Spencer Rattler if they don't draft a quarterback.
Taking a competitive snap in what, 3 years now? And
Did he get in one of the NFC? He got into the NFC or the.
Yeah, he did.
Did he play?
He did
play. Yeah, because Goff got hurt.
Goff got hurt.
Here's the other thing, and I don't know if we've talked about this in the program, but I have talked to people, not anybody in position to, firsthand make this call, but I have talked to people that say Shador Sanders is not going to be under consideration at 9. That's what I've heard. So I'll be surprised if it's Shador Sanders at 9. Just from what I'm hearing, he's not going to be under consideration. Now, I don't know if that means no quarterbacks at 9, but I think at least in particular him.
But nobody else makes a ton of sense at 9, assuming Cam Ward's gone.
Unless they got a high grade on somebody.
If you have a high grade on somebody but nobody else does, it's not worth. I don't know. I mean, I know the Saints don't trade back.
Ask the Falcons.
Yeah, you take Jackson Dart at 9 because you love him so much, even though nobody else would take him that high.
I don't think this Carr news changes anything about their draft at all. If you don't have a guy graded in the first round before the Carr news or after, it doesn't change it. I mean, you're not going to take the guy just
Out of
just because of that.
desperation.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
that's the
can't-
worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
So I don't think this changes. I think outside right now, a lot of the speculation around the country is way off on the Saints.
I don't think it changes what they would do at 9, but I do think it changes maybe what their draft is, because you think about, at least from a snap perspective, like, all right, if you take a quarterback in the second round and Derek Carr is going to be your starter, you're going to have him compete with Rattler and Hayner to be your backup. Like, maybe it just squeezes Jake Hayner out of here.
Yeah, I agree.
Like,
with that.
it would.
Hayner's. It's tough to see where he fits.
I
in.
think it changes that, though. There is like more of a priority to at least get someone else in the mix now, versus I don't think it changes necessarily 9, but I think day 2 is kind of. I think they need to address it on day 2 rather than waiting till day 3 like they did.
And I've heard they like L's up.
Yeah. I was gonna say, should we just clear out?
Can we not talk about this?
Can we ring the bell?
I told you, like, I talked, I've got this story. I wrote my column last week, but I talked to 4 teams, personnel people. One was a coach, 3 personnel people with 4 teams that none of them are in the quarterback market. So they could talk freely about these quarterbacks, this quarterback draft class. They've got their guy, in other words. Now, they may take one later rounds, but the top of the class. So they were free to talk about it. And 2 of them had Tyler Shuck as the top quarterback on their boards in this draft, above Cam Ward. I'm just telling you, this was 2 different. I think he's valued a lot higher than what's out there right now by NFL teams. So, and I think the Saints like him. He was just there this past week. I think in some ways they were trying to keep that under the radar. I think a lot of teams are. Their interest in him because it hasn't gotten out, but it's slowly starting to get out.
If the Saints draft him, are you going to get him off to the side and talk Louisville football every week?
Of course, yeah.
It's going to be insufferable.
Along with the offensive line coach, that guy that played at Louisville, on the Saints staff.
No, we're talking about
The one that we talked to at the coaches thing.
Brendan Nugent?
Yeah. Is that his name?
no.
The guy that went to Louisville that.
Yeah, he was their former center.
Tobias
Yeah.
Hulu.
Yeah, him.
Yeah, of course. Look, here's the thing I would say about Shuck that I do think makes a little sense if you're the Saints. We all know he's 25. He's going to be 26 by the season. He's been in a bunch of systems. This is a guy that, like, you could plug in, and he's probably going to be the most NFL-ready guy in the draft. If you're looking at Kellen Moore having to go through a transition with a transitioning roster, you could do worse than plug him in there for 2 or 3 years until you get your real guy.
He feels a bit like Knicks last year, where not anyone thought of him as necessarily a first-round talent, but he may have been.
Well,
I guess outside
Broncos
of Jaden
thought
Daniels.
of him.
Yeah, he may not have been outside of Jaden Daniels. He was the most ready to just walk into an NFL locker room and be the guy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you've seen him play, he looks like a dude. He's 6'5", he's athletic. They put up 36 points a game. But there's obviously some drawbacks. I think he's probably got a second-round grade. So I wouldn't take him at number 9. There's too much. My point on number 9 right now is this team can't afford to miss at number 9. I just think you got to get somebody in there that's going to be a core player and then figure out quarterback after that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it doesn't matter who the quarterback is in 2025. You need like an all-pro type player at number 9.
Well, I don't know if they're going to get that.
I'm not saying this year, but like eventually he is going to be that type of player.
Zach, they've had they've had 2 all-pro players in the last decade, and one of them's playing for the Eagles.
No time like the present, man. You got to nail
I don't
those
think
picks.
this draft's looked at that way. I think this draft is looked at. Who was it the other day? Daniel Jeremiah said it's a starter draft. You just want to get starters out of this draft. Now one guy might. Obviously, there's going to be exceptions to that, but for the most part, there's not a bunch of step in. Maybe Genty, Travis Hunter,
Abdul Carter, maybe.
and Abdul Carr, maybe. But otherwise, I think you just want you want to get Will Campbell, who might be your starter for the next 8 or 9 years. Do you think Taliesin Fuaga is going to be an All-Pro? I think he's going to be a really good starter for.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Making a Pro Bowler too.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's what I mean. But that's
maybe
what you
Pro
want.
Bowl is more realistic than All-Pro.
That's what you want.
Okay, so we are 9 days from the draft. We're going to have a couple of podcasts before then. We'll be back Friday. This is all obviously intertwined in that conversation, but we'll We'll frame it some different. What did you say? Like nine players the Saints could pick at 9. We could do something like that on Friday.
Yeah, I'd have that coming on the site tomorrow. Yeah.
We've got a story on that Matt wrote coming up.
Shameless self-promotion.
Quarterbacks are part of that.
Absolutely.
Like I don't know. I mean, they have to be part of that now. But that is the discussion that we'll have over the next 9 days.
Trade up for Genty, man. That's what they need to do. That's one thing a lot of fans pushing back, like, you're sapping all the fun out of this. We want a quarterback. Don't think people will be excited if they drafted
fun.
Ashton Genty? I think they'd be over the moon.
Genty makes life for Spencer Rattler a lot easier.
Right.
You got to run about
Genty might not like it very much, but
This team should absolutely not draft a running back.
I love it. Go up and get him, man. Be Reggie Bush.
I think
People
he's a
went
good
crazy
player.
for Reggie
That's
Bush.
fine. Well, how did that turn out?
Ricky Williams.
Yeah.
Trade the whole draft.
Trade
to
the
get
whole
Genty.
draft to go get Genty. That's exactly what
Where's
the Saints
Ditka
need.
when you need him?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I mean, any final thoughts on the Carr situation, guys, as it stands? Obviously, things could change before we get together again, probably on Friday. But this is as uncertain, as messy of a situation as I can remember a team having at this particular time in the offseason, where everything just gets a wrench thrown into it.
Yeah, not great, Bob.
That's your final thought.
That's
Well, the Pelican situation is kind of deflected a little bit off the
Jesus,
attention away
man.
from that.
yeah.
You know,
That was the other podcast idea, is like, how messed up are things on Airline Drive, Rod?
It's pretty bad. This is the tie for the worst season ever for the two franchises. 26 total wins for the Pelicans and Saints.
You need to ask Joe Dumars.
Over,
what
under
the Saints
next
should
year.
do at number 9.
I go over next year, just because I think
The Pelicans almost have to be better.
I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
You got
They
to win
almost
more
have
than
to be
20.
Famous last words, gentlemen.
All right, that'll do it for us today. Our producer is Norman Bell. He's Rod Walker. Matthew Paris, Jeff Duncan. Check us out, New Orleans Saints at NOLA.com YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends about us. We'll have another podcast out on Friday. We are going to have a live NFL draft show next week as well. And in the meantime, you can read all these guys' stuff at NOLA.com/Saints. We'll see you next time.
Tyler Stuck.